Hello and good morning. Happy Thursday, August 7th, 2025, in the day of our Lord, Donald Trump. I'm Manila Chan. That over there is not Ted Rall. Ted is traveling today to Montana for ahead of his book signing at the Barnes & Noble over in Kalispell, Montana, where producer Robbie resides. So in for Ted is the beautiful Scottie Nell Hughes. Anyone that's followed this work of mine and Scotty's, you all know who Scottie Nell Hughes is. So she'll be sitting in, giving us a different perspective than what we would ordinarily hear from Ted. So that's fun. But you are still tuned into the Ted Manila Information Show, TMI Show for short, because obviously we bring you way too much information. We're live Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern time. So please be sure to smash the like button, the follow button, the subscribe button, all of the buttons, because it goes a real long way to help this little show continue to grow. So on today's show, obviously, Scotty, this is a topic that hits home for you and me. This big Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump meeting that's going to happen.
Manila, hold on. You're going so fast. You're like, I bet when your husband wakes up to you at 6 a.m., you're like, hey, did you hear that we're on the verge of World War III? Like,
I do.
Honey, good morning. I love you. How did you sleep last night? Would you like some coffee? I mean, I can only imagine dating you with probably. Hey, so how many kids do you want? What's your income like?
It was.
This is supposed to be.
Ain't no time for that.
But there is. Manila, we got to stop and smell the roses. I know.
We can't. Donald Trump paved over the roses.
Okay. I like softballed you that one. I did not. As soon as it was coming out of my mouth, I know, which is something
you were like, oh.
Later on this day, because Manila and I have a different opinion on the cement covering the rose garden. Oddly enough.
It's cement. It is marble. But yeah, that is on the docket. But if you guys don't know, that's the last topic.
Can I just ask real quick, Manila, how are you doing? How are you?
I am tired. Let me just say this so Scotty's got two kids. One is grown and in college now. That's crazy. And the other one's almost grown and almost in college. Meanwhile, I've got a 6-year-old at home for the summer. And now I understand now why parents scramble to book their kids for summer camp.
Vacation Bible School. Go find all the area churches. My kids attended more vacation Bible schools. They were Episcopalian, Catholic, Methodist, Baptist, Buddhist, whoever had a VBS because it was free, and they judged them based on how good their snacks and their crafts were. Done. Fine.
I didn't know because I'm new at this, obviously. I never understood why parents were so eager to find a summer camp. So I thought, it'll be fine. Like, I've got a kindergartner at home. It'll be fine. I'm thinking it's like when he was 2 years old where I could plop him down in a playpen and just trap him there for a little while. No. Turns out, lesson learned. Turns out I was wrong. And you can't get anything done when you have a school-age child at home. Mm-hmm. Lesson learned.
At any point.
I know that now.
It's gonna be forever, because even when they're in middle school and high school, they're gonna want you to watch TV with them, and you're like, but I have to do that, and then you start feeling guilty. No, you do. You have to. Planning in parenthood is huge. If you were not a planner before you became a parent, you become one just out of survival skills. On that side of it.
I've learned that the hard way. So now I know for next summer, I gotta, I think by Christmas, probably hop on to finding some kind of summer camp activity, because 24/7 with a 6-year-old pulling at my shirt every 5 or 10 minutes, lesson learned.
It's interesting you bring this up, because you say you're still in summer. Our kids back here in the South, we went back to school this week, if not halfway through last week. college, our kids are back in school. My daughter's still in high school. She went back. She just left for class actually. So we're back. It's so interesting to watch where you live in the country based on whether or not you're
back yesterday.
Well, so yeah, so we've been back, and ours is based off the football season. Let me just call it for what it is. We need our guys to practice earlier, so our school's getting earlier, and so they start the first day of August that they're allowed to start school in. But that is another. There's this new policy, and I know you're going to hate me for this, Manila, but this is what I'm here for. There's this new policy that has gone into most states around the country that's a cell phone ban. And I firmly believe, and this is, so how do you feel about it? Do you think there should be cell phones allowed in school?
No.
I see, this is where we're going. See, I love this. Why? Why not?
Because look, back in our day, pagers were a thing. And I remember I had a pager, I think by my 11th or 12th grade year, I had a pager, and those were already banned because you're not supposed to have electronics at school. And I used to sneak and look at my pager all the time. Not that it's not like today where you're getting text messages, right? You're getting numbers and in code. You have to turn it upside down to look, to see what people are trying to spell out. And that was, looking back now, obviously it was a distraction. And in today's day and age, with the advent of smartphones, kids are completely distracted, completely. So they're going to sneak their cell phones in and be trying to do Instagrams or TikToks all day. It's too much distraction.
Okay.
But at the same time, the schools are also, not really teaching either. So that's a different conversation.
So here's the two ways of looking that I'm looking at. One, I think this is legislation that was obviously made by people who do not have kids in public schools. Now, oddly enough, most private schools are exempt from this. So their kids can still have their cell phones, or what I wish public schools would have done is they've adopted responsible rules on when you come in, you put it up at you put it up in the envelope. There were lots of cell phone boxes in my kids' rooms up until now.
Oh, is that not what they're doing?
No, there's no cell phones allowed on property at all.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, I'm not there yet, so I didn't know. I just thought they meant okay, you walk in and then you have a cell phone, I don't know, storage area in every class that you go to or something.
No, they've already had that. And that's what I'm saying. There's responsible ways, and teachers can enforce it. But let's talk about it first from a safety perspective. Do you understand that some people have already called it the wild, wild west now? Because when there was a cell phone, there were videos, there was accountability. There were accountability for bullies. There were accountability for racial slurs, for fights. Instead of just he said, she said, and so nothing could ever be done. Or you would have a group that say, well, this person said it. They never really said it. But if you have it on video, it's undeniable. Those videos have saved, when fights break out, you can see who started.
Oh, I agree with, I'm fine with it if you're using it during, in between walking to classes or on your recess or whatever they call it nowadays, lunch.
But it's kind of like why homeowners own a gun. I own a gun in my house. I might put out front, this house is protected. Doesn't mean I'm going to use it, but it keeps people away. Knowing that you can.
It's a deterrent.
It's a deterrent. So knowing that you could potentially be recorded and held accountable for your actions deterred, I think, a lot of fights, a lot of bullying, a lot of, hate crimes happening within our public schools. The things that I'm seeing come out there, some kids even refer to it as the wild, wild west now. They're worried about it because you can't have every kid in the lunchroom. So all of a sudden you've gone back to some of those old school tactics. So
at the same time, there's that too. I mean, we survived without cell phones and everything in the lunchroom. We survived just fine at recess at the playground. We're fine. We're probably stronger for it.
We did. Some kids didn't. And it's a different world that we live in too. Also from a safety perspective, we do live in a different world today than when you and I were going through in the 90s in high school. There are a lot more different challenges when it comes to what can happen. Unfortunately, we do have to deal with school shootings. We do have to deal with safety issues. Yeah. And so from that perspective, I just think, from a safety perspective, kids need to have their phones. Also, teachers. I hate to tell you this, there are some good teachers and there are some really bad ones. That's
always been the case, though, all through history.
It has. But now we have case recordings of it. Last year I had one science teacher, and luckily it was recorded. Now nothing was done about the science teacher. Actually tell a biology class that my niece was in, and luckily they all recorded it, said that this is why we should have abortions on demand, and Trump is a fascist, and used all sorts of slurs right before the election happened. Nothing was done about the teacher, but it was recorded. So it wasn't just kids being dramatic when they came home and told their kids, this is what my biology teacher told me. They had it on film. And that, that sort of, unfortunately, we need that accountability. It also protected teachers, I feel like, because so many times we'd see the videos of the kids that would come up and assault a teacher, and at least we had it on video. So like I said, I think these were rules made by folks in principle, boomers, that it sounded good. There were other ways to handle it from keeping the kids distracted. But then also, Manila,
I didn't know that they were taking them away. I thought they were just had to be put away, meaning ban. I didn't know it was like, might as well be no guns on campus.
Right.
Same thing. Oh, I didn't know it was that, but I'm not at that stage yet. So, I hadn't really looked into it.
So then here's the other thing. This is the stage you are in. We're teaching our kids about technology, everything these kids do. My kids are in public school. For the second year in a row, they were handed an iPad on the first day of school. They are being taught about technology, and their books are
they need to be.
They need to be. So on one hand, you're telling them, it's kind of like, hey, we're going to hand you a gun every day, but we're not going to teach you how to responsibly use it and to put limitations on it.
That's fair.
And that's the thing that I think would have been better, was teaching these students how to responsibly handle technology, handle phones, handle social media.
I think they need a class for that. Starting at my son's age, I think they need a class, like a specific, if not even a class, at least like a little portion of the day where it's dedicated to teaching small children online safety and stuff like that. So because they're growing up with this, they're native to it. And I don't know what action is being taken here, at least where I'm at in Northern Virginia. I don't know if they're considering anything like that. But now that I think of it, maybe I should show up to one of these school board meetings.
I think you should be there, Manila. And I think they, when I showed to school board meetings, you hear the
Lord
come out. The school board hates to see me, as bad as my kid's high school principal hates to see me. I am a pain in their neck, but we get things done. We care.
No, I did that first week of kindergarten. The school, the administration knows me.
Do you want parents involved or do you not? And I get that we can be a headache. I can get that, we only care about our own children, but there are legitimate parents that want to be. I think every elementary, middle, and high school needs to have a PTO organization. I'm in a high school that does not have a PTO organization.
Don't they, a PTA, Parent Teacher Association?
Oh yeah, parent teachers. They need to have something organized that keeps parents engaged. I think that is the one.
I agree. I thought every school had that. Isn't that like a common thing?
Usually elementary, somewhat in middle. High school, it's by choice. And a lot of the times teachers go, we just like to be on our own. But then, hey, by the way, on Teacher Appreciation Week, we want to, do we get any goodies for teacher? Like there needs to be, it's for the benefit of everyone. And I think that communication, it needs, and that's how, we have this big talk. I know, are you doing public or private? I know you've been in that debate
and I'm not, homeschool is not off the table yet, but I think for right now, because he's a pandemic era baby, he needs the socialization, and a couple more years of that before mama has to do some real crunch time with figuring out, okay, where are we at the educational milestones and whatever at school versus what he's taught at home. So, I mean, I do that now as supplemental, but this is a whole conversation we can have for like a Rumble special. Like this is a back to school. I mean, seriously, different stages of parenting. And it's back to school season. And a lot of parents, the demographic that watches the TMI show are of parent age. Mm-hmm. So I think this hits home for a lot of people, a lot to be said about that. But because I'm not going to try to keep you forever and a day, we got to get to all the news.
We got to get to Russia. We got to talk about World War III.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's going to happen. So on the docket, obviously, we're going to talk about this Trump-Putin meeting that allegedly is sealed. They've agreed to it. They're going to do it. Now they're picking out the location. I heard it's the UAE. I don't know. We'll see. It has to be like a neutral place. They've done, the high level talks in Turkey. That's led nowhere. But now it's going to be these two men, mano a mano. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about today. We'll also talk about, Scottie, a thing that you wrote about generic drugs. And I'm all for this. And I'm shocked that you're calling on conservatives to push for this. So Scottie wrote a piece that she'll reveal to us a little bit later down the show. We'll talk about a pain in the butt end of summer, because it's still summer for us and summer for a lot of people. United Airlines yesterday grounded all kinds of flights, had hours and hours of delay, just probably ruined the trips of thousands and thousands of people because of a tech glitch. So I don't know how much we have to say about that other than we know American air travel sucks. And I don't know how to improve that. And then Scottie and I will get into this debate that should be on HGTV about the White House Rose Garden.
And the
ballroom. We're on
ballroom.
different sides of this.
And the ballroom.
Scottie says that they imagined it to be a Versailles. I said, is it Versailles or Versace?
It's a little bit of both.
So we have a difference in opinion on decor. So, but it's the White House, and I think very soon we're going to see. I think the first event on the White House Rose Garden, the newly paved Rose Garden, and I can't believe, Scottie, that this is an actual issue in Washington, D.C., that people are really fired up about one way or the other. I cannot believe a home remod is a hot topic in Washington, because ultimately that's what it is. The White House, I get that it's a symbol of this or that and the other thing, but at the end of the day, a family moves in there every 4 years or 8 years, and it's their home. Mm-hmm. You should be able to decorate it the way you like. Yeah, we'll see. We'll talk about that. So, all right.
Wait, is it their home, or are they renting property, and does it belong to the landlords? And that would mean the American taxpayers are the landlords.
I think it's given to them for that time. I think it's not technically land. You're deeded the property for those 4 or 8 years. So, okay, let's jaws it, let's wipe it, and then head to the first topic. All right.
Not me.
So the first topic is obviously the big Putin-Trump meeting. Okay. So first up, let me go through the details here. Russian President Vladimir Putin could meet his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump as soon as next week. Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov told journalists today a venue for the summit has already been agreed. They haven't revealed it, but it's apparently been agreed upon. Expectations for an in-person meeting between Putin and Trump increased following a visit to Moscow by U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff this week, which the White House described as producing better results than expected. Ushakov said details of the proposed meeting would be revealed later, but an agreement in principle has already been reached and that it would happen soon. Witkoff also proposed the idea of a trilateral meeting involving Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky, which Moscow declined to comment. I think they want some one-on-one time, personally, with Trump and Putin. Previous reports in the U.S. media said the Trump administration was looking for a meeting with Putin next week and had proposed extending an invitation to Zelensky. The Ukrainian leader claims he needs to talk directly with the Russian president to make progress in peace talks. Witkoff visited Moscow on Wednesday for what Trump later called highly productive talks with Putin and other Russian officials. In previous weeks, the U.S. president had expressed frustration with a lack of progress in peace negotiations between Moscow and Kiev and threatened to impose additional sanctions on Russia and its international trade partners. Moscow has repeatedly stated it would prefer a swift, peaceful resolution of the conflict in a way that addresses its core issues. According to Russian officials, obstacles to peace include unrealistic demands by Ukraine and the commitment by Kiev's European backers to provide continued weapons deliveries. Officials in Kiev have indicated that they agreed to resume direct talks with Russia in May, not to appear an opponent of Trump's mediation efforts. Ukraine is seeking further Western military aid and sanctions on Russia, claiming that this could turn the tide on the battlefield in Kiev's favor. Russia has accused Zelensky of pursuing an armed conflict, quote, to the last Ukrainian for personal ambition. So, boy, oh boy, there's a lot to unpack there, Scottie. I mean, first off, I think for all the one-on-ones that Zelensky has had with Donald Trump, I think it's only fair for Vladimir Putin to get some one-on-one FaceTime. So, no, I don't think Zelensky should be invited. That little twerp self-invites to every event where there are major Western cameras. He's got to be there. He's got to go to the Pope's funeral. He's not even Catholic. Like, he's not even a Christian. He just self-invites. He just shows up everywhere and then goes panhandling for money in the most inappropriate places, like the Pope's funeral. That, I'm not exactly the best Catholic in the world. I'm not really practicing, but I took great offense to that this was a funeral and the dude tries to bend Donald Trump's ear on the sidelines of the funeral services for Pope Francis. Dude, that is not the right time. That is not an appropriate time to start begging for money and asking for more arms at a funeral. That's just inappropriate. And again, I think this dude keeps trying to obviously extend the war. It's inevitable. Ukraine has been on a losing path. It's on a losing path. Millions of people are dying. They have no men left in their country. They have now conscripted little boys younger than your son and old men 60 and over. That has come to law this week. Like, their state Duma has approved it because they're out of men. Meanwhile, Zelensky is over here trying to continue the grift into perpetuity until literally, what are you going to do? Start conscripting grandmas, little old babushkas next? It's just too much. Like, stop throwing good money after bad. Let the two people actually handling the war, because let's face it, it is a Biden proxy war, and Vladimir Putin has had to deal with it. Zelensky is not even a real player here, other than he's, now the czar of Ukraine because, he's been out of office technically for a year. No, he shouldn't be invited.
There is so much to unpack in everything you said. I wish I could have written down notes because I wouldn't remember. I think what is really interesting is from a United States perspective, President Trump campaigned and overwhelmingly was elected because he promised to bring peace to this region specifically. He specifically was going to. And yes, he does have and I'm going to say a good professional relationship with who America would consider to be some of our enemies. But he does have one with President Putin. He did establish it. And he is right. This is not a Biden war. I'm sorry. I'm going to disagree with you. This is an Obama war. This is a Victoria Nuland rule. And I love folks that do not properly look into the history of this conflict. They think it just started in 2021. This conflict started all the way back in 2008. It progressed in 2014. It progressed in 2020. Oddly enough, it's around the same time that we're having our presidential elections, just FYI. And then it obviously went really south down in 2020 and 2021 to where we are today. And the disclaimer is, there are people who have been affected here in America by this economically, said who have lost their jobs because as just literally having nothing to do with either one, but have been sort of like the folks that have been the scapegoats or been the ones that have fallen through the cracks. But I digress. In this meeting right here, there is something really sad when you have American politicians who have spent more time in Ukraine than in their own constituencies in their own states here in the United States. And people are smart Connect the dots, folks. Why would you have a senator like what we have in South Carolina with Lindsey Graham, who would spend more time in Ukraine in a supposed war zone than he would when his own state was under crisis? He's put more time, more of his legislation has been sponsored to help the folks of Ukraine than it has the people of South Carolina who he represents. Understand that you're not being told the truth of what is really happening here and what Ukraine has served for so long as a pass-through to all of the lobbyists and those that have funded the war machine in Washington, D.C. It is not about the Ukrainian people. And I hate every time that I hear an American politician get up there and talk about the people, the dead people, and even in the media, it is not about them. Because if you really cared about the people on the ground in Ukraine, you would be paying attention to what is happening to the people in Ukraine and what is happening on the front lines. And even this week, finally, a journalist had enough nerve to ask President Trump, have you seen the videos that are not propaganda? They are verified truth of vans going around and picking up men off the streets to make them serve on the front lines, kidnapping them, screaming, moms screaming as their sons are being ripped out of their arms and they're holding on to them. Those videos are legit happening in the streets of some of these cities in Ukraine right now because they've run out of soldiers. And a reporter asked President Trump, and he was very telling when he said, Manila, I don't know what you're talking about. You should know because it's been happening for months. And it shows that President Trump has not been told the truth of what is happening on the ground. Hence why this meeting is so important. My problem is, Manila, one, if it actually happens, I will be highly surprised because there is nothing that is more dangerous to the truth than it actually be giving the ability to be shown. And if Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump are able to talk mano a mano to each other, and Vladimir Putin does speak English, and he's able to not go through a translator, then I promise you, we will see truth resolve. But my other hesitation is I want to know who's going to be a part of these delegations. If there is somebody like a Lindsey Graham that is traveling over there, we're done. Like peace will not be allowed. I will go on and tell you the outcome of this meeting based on who Donald Trump takes in his entourage.
Well, okay, so this obviously the announcement came right after Steve Witkoff's meeting, like right after. I would argue that Steve Witkoff, who is another billionaire buddy of his, who's a real estate magnate in New York, right? He's a billionaire developer with no so-called diplomatic experience, has been the most vital tool in Donald Trump's administration. He's been a better diplomat than morons like Marco Rubio, who seem kind of paralyzed with whether or not he's a neocon. Is he truly a conservative? Is he with the MAGA movement who's against, sending more and more money and aid to Ukraine? I'm sure Marco Rubio's going to go. I have a feeling JD Vance will probably go too. I think the highest of his cabinet will go. I would be curious to see if Tulsi Gabbard would be invited. Now, I know she's the DNI, and I know that's, technically not a diplomatic position, but before she got into this office, she has been one of the clearest voices and taking a sane approach on how we deal with Russia than anybody else officially in his cabinet. So I would love to see if she went. I think that would be a good sign. Obviously, if Witkoff goes again, I think that's also a good sign. I think the less that Donald Trump invites, the fewer establishment heads that we see, the better. Because as we know, whoever Donald Trump talks to last, whoever's whispering in his ear last, whether it's Miss Lindsey Graham over there whispering sweet nothings with his Southern accent, lilting accent in Donald Trump's ear, he listens to that. Or if it's Volodymyr Zelensky having a fit at the White House or whatever, and then calling dad to be like, Dad, I'm sorry. I need more money. Please, can you reactivate my credit card? He listens to that. So whoever is in his ear last is how Donald Trump reacts. So I do think he needs a real face-to-face, just the mano a mano, just those two men. I think he can invite his entourage, sure. But I think the two men need to go in a room privately and discuss this. I think that's the only way forward.
I think it's the only way. The only issue is I agree with you. Witkoff has been amazing through all of this. And every time that Witkoff has met with a foreign leader, we've been on there's been truly a steps towards peace, and then it gets blown up by the outside. Witkoff, the reason why he's so successful is he doesn't have his strings being pulled by anybody else. He's not reliant on anybody else. He understands that economically, if he wants to prosper, he means the American economy has to prosper. And all of these wars are only prospering the bank accounts of the elected senators and congressmen and the war machine. It's not prospering the American people. Let me point out, any of our conflicts, when we go into places like Russia, China, when we talk to India, when we talk anything with military, when there's a military threat, is not good for the American economy. They make it sound like it's good. It's not. It's good for Lindsey Graham's campaign fund. It's not good for our economy. So Witkoff understands that for him to continue to grow, he needs to make sure that America is set on a prosperous path. And I do believe that he also believes in peace is his priority. He does not like the Washington, D.C. establishment. I want Trump to walk into that room. I think Witkoff can be by his side. I think J.D. Vance needs to be by his side. Now, if you haven't noticed recently, J.D. Vance and Donald Trump have not really been seen together. They are doing everything they can to isolate Donald Trump from his typical, from the group that got him elected. He's not around anymore. You don't hear that he's having phone calls, and maybe he is. I don't know. With the Tucker Carlsons, you don't hear the people that were in the past. And we're having our own war within the conservative movement. But you've seen him be very isolated. When his friendship with Elon Musk broke up, you realize that he was going to become even more isolated than he was before. So he is only getting information from those around him, and we frankly don't know who that is. And so I want him to walk in the room with J.D. Vance, Witkoff, and Donald Trump, those three people. And I think we would see a very easy termination, because he is right. You cannot be forcing being so aggressive with our tariffs, with our economic policy, and then be at the same time aggressive with our military policy. Because the two right there are going to cause an economic, and we're already suffering. And nobody's telling Donald Trump this. And I expect them. I'm actually for the tariffs. I think responsibly we could do this to where we could make that trade imbalance be more equal. I don't know if I would have used this approach, but we can talk about that later. In this case, that we cannot expect the American economy to in any way overcome all of this, absolute dramatic things that's happening to it, and still continue to be on this path towards war and funding a war using Ukraine as our proxy.
Well, look, Donald Trump was it yesterday or the day before, not only issued the threat and then immediately, like a few hours later, imposes sanctions that become, tariffs actually on India and China, who are continuing to do business, mainly buying cheap Russian crude, on pennies on the dollar and what they would be able to buy from the US, because we ship out all of our crude too. This is a market competition. Has nobody told Donald Trump the truth that all of Biden's first set of sanctions, the myriad thousands of sanctions that Biden issued, did nothing but actually strengthen Russia's economy? Because then the thing is, the Russians knew from the Cold War let's just say how to make their own butter at home. They know they got their cows, they got their milk, and they know how to make their own butter at home. They don't need outside deals to make their country work, right? So when Biden issued all these sanctions, it served as like blowback to the US to see that the Russian economy, guess what, didn't hurt when Starbucks left. The Russians as a people didn't mind that McDonald's went away. They didn't care. They have all of their own stuff. In fact, Russian companies, just like companies at home, just went and bought up all of those pre-existing locations with all of their equipment. They bought it for cheap, and now they're operating all of their own stuff, like without the need for US corporations there. Has nobody told Donald Trump that sanctions have not worked on Russia, and you're only going to embolden the relationship between Russia and India, Russia and China? You're only pushing the three of them closer and making them angry with you. I feel like whoever is in Donald Trump's ear is feeding him a load of crap that's not real, that's just not the reality on the ground, that these economies are expanding with or without the US, that this isn't the early 20th century anymore, where you are required to get America's help or approval to become a strong nation. All of these people have their own industrial um, capacities that no longer require the US, but the US requires India's production capacity. The US requires China's production capacity. We've offshored all of our jobs. And now, with all of these sanctions and tariffs that he's imposing, there's going to be more blowback on the American economy. I get that he's trying to bring production back to the US. I get that. But that's not something you can stop and do on a dime. You can't drop a dime and expect all of these manufacturers, these, apples, and I don't know, name any product that's made in China, made in India. You can't expect them to set up shop in Western Ohio tomorrow. It takes a couple of years to get a factory set up. It takes like zoning and all of that stuff. It takes years to get that done. So I get that that's part of why he's trying to be tough against Russia's friends like India and China. I get that. But that's not the reality. The reality is, in the short term, in the near term, when Donald Trump's out of office the next 3 years, it's going to push China and India even closer to Russia and have a better relationship than we have with them.
Manila, here's the thing, is that this is what's dangerous about this. What you just said is completely true. And for folks who go, she's just spouting propaganda. No, go look for yourself. Go look and ask yourself, why is the ruble continuing to rise? Why the dollar is falling, and it has surpassed it? Why is it that Russia has zero debt? Zero debt. While the Americans, they have no foreign debt, while Americans do. Well, while America is trillions of dollars and gaining in debt. By the way, who owns our debt? But that's a whole nother segment. Ask yourself why Russia is still on a version of their version of the gold standard. They still have actual gold to back up their currency. And I don't know what is backing us up, because we still have not gotten to see Fort Knox. It's anti-American to say. That's actually just the facts of the situation that we're dealing with now. And anybody that wants to say that the Russian economy is collapsing, go do your own research. That is right there. That's propaganda. That is a complete lie. When they're saying that the 100,000 Russian soldiers are dying daily, that is propaganda. That is not happening. And people say, well, the fact that it's gone on this long and that Russia can't win the war in Ukraine, that is propaganda. The reason why it's happening, the whole thing was not to defeat Ukraine. It has never been Vladimir Putin's goal to overtake Ukraine. It was Vladimir Putin's goal was to keep NATO and the West from putting bombs on the border that could actually hit Moscow. That's what the goal has been, and why this had to happen. It wasn't about destroying or killing as many Ukrainians as they could, or just taking over that region. And anybody that continues to preach that is completely lying, because make no mistake, Russia is still the number one nuclear power in the world. And if Russia was that evil, that devious, they would have nuked Kiev immediately. And they did it for a reason, because that was never their goal. And just like we have people that live in the Southwest that are related to those in Latin America, that's the same thing Ukrainian. I am Ukrainian. My grandparents are from Ukraine, but we have strong Russian ties. Vladimir Zelensky was born in Russia. He was a comedian, most famous in Russia. He was elected because he promised that he was going to get along with Russia. And that's what the Ukrainian people initially wanted. Then he was threatened with, oh, by the way, we're going to take you out of office if you don't go along with our deals in the West. But people just need to understand the truth. And anybody spouting this idea that Russia is collapsing could not be farther from the truth. If anything, the policy the West has pushed has strengthened the Russian economy, has strengthened the loyalists. And oh, by the way, those calling for anything to happen to Vladimir Putin, if you think that he is strong, just wait till the group that you see that would replace him. They would not have any mercy. The ones that would possibly go into his place, they would be the ones that say, you know what, forget it. We're going to establish we will take over Ukraine. We won't do it the nice way.
That right there.
Very, very meticulous. And for what he's continued to battle up against, he's been very restrained, because trust me, they have the capabilities to do a lot of damage, and they choose not to. Ask yourself why.
That right there is like all these people that want to overthrow Vladimir Putin here in the West. They fail to think, then what? Then who? Because they don't know enough, because they live in their silos, and outlets like RT are not allowed here in the States for them to understand that whatever you think of Vladimir Putin, back at home in Moscow, he's actually the moderate.
People won't believe that. But
People don't believe.
Do your research for yourself, folks. Please, we can't beg of you enough. Like I said, we're talking about two people that have been impacted not once, not twice by this war. That's what I love about all of this stuff coming out about. This is what I got to ask Manila about, and I know we've got a great commercial break coming up. But I've got to ask folks from Trump's perspective. We now know that the Russia in 2016, it was all a fake lie, that our intelligence worked along with the Democrats to not only not get Trump elected in 2016, but to tie this false narrative that there was collusion between the two groups. Trump has admitted that. He wants to hold people accountable for that. He wants to. So then why are you trusting that same intelligence right now in regards to Russia?
That's right.
What am I missing here, Trump? The same people are still there. So which ones are you going to, you know for a proven fact that they set you up back then. So you think they just had a change of heart? And so the intelligence they're giving you right now about what's going on in the Russian-Ukraine conflict is true? You're going to trust them now, or maybe they're setting you up again. It's mind-blowing to me that in the same newscast, back-to-back stories are Trump Trump exposes corruption in the U.S. intelligence and the 2016 Russiagate hoax. But then, hey, let's go start World War III with Russia because supposedly our intelligence is telling us this.
Well, because they're going to take over all of Europe, because you have world leaders like Keir Starmer over there saying, oh, the Russians are losing. They can't even take the Donbass, blah, blah, blah. But then out of the other side of his mouth, he's going to say, but the Russians are going to steamroll the rest of Ukraine and go into Poland and then come into Western Europe. Dude, you can't have it both ways. Either the Russians are weakling, like their military sucks and they can't even take over, this sliver of the Eastern Donbass, or they're the most powerful thing since, the creator himself, right? And they're going to go straight up into Poland and into Germany and Austria. And then before you know it, they're in France.
Something no Russian leaders ever said. And like I said, and we're talking to two people here that call us what you want to call us. I like to joke I'm an unemployed former Russian spy. But it's because we know the region and we still have intel within the region. And if they were doing horrible things in there, we'll tell you what it's like to work with Russians. Oh, I could write a book about what it's like to work with Russians and how just absolutely non-emotional and you have
logical.
You have
reasonable.
But I mean, you have to be by the facts. There's no emotional,
Right.
I think the only day that I ever took off, and even then I kind of was the day that we put my dog down to sleep. The only day in 4 years.
I remember that day.
Yeah. But that was the only time because there was such a work ethic that it was a priority that your job is to tell the news. And if you're not going to do it, then we need to look for, that was one of those things was that you had to tell and they expected you to do it because that was expected of you, regardless of what was going on. So we could talk about what it's like to work with them. We would tell you, I think if anybody would, the good, bad, and the ugly. In this case, we can see where they're trying to twist the truth to try to get us even more advanced in war. And this case of Trump meeting Putin in person, I have hope, but it's really just going to be based on who he has around him and what is said as he walks out that room.
Yeah. And with that, we'll pause on that so we get a word from our sponsor. I'll ask producer Robbie to put that up there. And I think I'll have to do the reading. So bear with us. Obviously, we're down a Ted who normally does this.
Sorry, I'm not that skilled.
No, it's the way we have the software setups and
technology.
Robbie's running one thing
in school, Manila. This would be streamlined.
Well, yeah. Well, they can make that a little better. Okay, ready to go. All right. Word from our sponsor. Ready to level up your game? AIM
Yeah.
Controllers is where custom meets unbeatable value. And right now, it's the best deal of the year. We start with official Sony and Xbox controllers, fully compatible with console and PC, no functionality lost. Then you go wild with custom features, smart bumpers, paddles, grips, stick height, custom buttons, even design your own PS5 snap panels. And here's the part no one else is doing: lifetime warranty on all modified parts. That's right, lifetime. What other company does that? Exactly. Normally, a fully loaded setup could run you $400, but during our one price promo, it's just 209 US dollars or 182 euro, no matter how many features you add. Use code RUMBLE at checkout and lock it in. This is your sign. Go to aimcontrollers.com and build the last controller you'll ever need. All right, so all the gamers out there, I didn't know custom controllers were a thing.
They're allowed to have their cell phones in school.
Oh, I did not know custom control. I'm not a gamer. I didn't know that was a thing. All right, this next one is Scottie's story. Really, because Scottie wrote it.
It is my story. And this is something that one of the projects I just kind of got brought onto, but it makes sense. Anybody that's ever had to deal with healthcare understands that one of the most expensive parts, not only seeing the doctor and being in the hospital, but it's the follow-up care and the prescriptions that come with it. We have a great opportunity here in America right now under Donald Trump, and he has made it his prerogative to lower healthcare costs and lower prescription costs, especially when it comes to big pharma. In fact, at one point, you even had RFK saying that he was going to remove all of the big pharma commercials on television. That didn't necessarily happen, and this is not necessarily a war against big pharma. Let me say, I think it's good, the technology, the investment they have in science and advancement and finding cures and ways to treat that doesn't have necessarily all of the other, what's the word I want to say, all of the other backlash that comes with some of these other some of these other pills. But what we're finding is that the main forms, the brand names, they're tying up these, when it comes time when those patents have run out after 20, 30 years, they've gotten their money. They've been able to work out all their kinks. They've gotten their money from their research. They definitely have been able to buy their Mercedes and enjoy reap the benefits of their investment. But they're tying these generic options up in court. And when you have the majority of prescriptions filled by generics, except for a lot of the very expensive ones for cures of cancers, it's time that we have some legislation that can be proposed that makes it easier for these generics to get, after a certain time limit, makes these generics an option for those folks that, have to pay for their own prescriptions, and insurance doesn't necessarily cover 100%. So that's kind of what I've been working for. And when they asked me if I, thought this was a good idea, having dealt with my mother and having to deal with it, I thought this was something that made sense. It's bipartisan, but it definitely makes sense, I think, for conservatives to get involved in. I mean, it's about free market. That's something conservatives are about. We like to, obviously, we want lower healthcare costs, more money within the families to spend. It will reduce the federal spending in healthcare. I think that most importantly, I think it's going to restore confidence in our pharmaceuticals, restore confidence in our healthcare system, something very important right now. There is little confidence. And I think that, this will make sure that, we know that one of the largest lobbying is the pharmaceutical companies in Washington, D.C. And I think this is something that even they could say, okay, like I said, we're not trying to take away from their spoils. We want their investments. We think they should continue investments. But after that time period, they need to be able to have a generic option that is available, that is just as good, same high quality, available to patients and reducing healthcare costs. So it's been a project I've been able to work on. It's been fun to work on, but I think it's one that if we can get this legislation passed, and great, this is being both sides, but some great groups. They're saying, you know what, this makes sense. We just need to have this organized, get the right legislators on board. And this is actual legislation that would have a good day-to-day effect by the people in the main streets of America. So Middle, that's my little spiel on it. And as we continue to garner steam with it and get the legislation and the legislators to agree to it, it only makes sense.
So tell me the name of the group that's pushing for this.
Well,
and where can they learn more?
Well, that's the thing. It's a coalition that's just now being formed. We're kind of getting all the groundwork together. I love, you've known me, it's kind of how the side person of being a journalist is I love the grassroots. I love watching people, whether it's getting kids together, organized with teachers in order to get new athletic facilities in their community built, or whether it's about getting initiatives put on ballots. I love when common people bond together over an issue that will make a difference within their community. In this case, it's a coalition, so it will be hopefully announced here in the next 3 or 4 weeks. We're trying to get the different members signed on to it with a website. So I'll know a lot more in September, but it looks like it definitely is going to happen. And I think this is something that will be beneficial to all Americans. And as a conservative, it's been really good to be able to get conservative groups involved in this because it's something that goes straight to our core values as conservatives.
Yeah, I'm with you. I hear that, that with the conservatives saying free market and all that stuff. But then when it comes to these big pharma drug companies, it's not a free market. It's not an open market. They try to hang on to these patents forever and a day. And like we saw how horribly that worked out with Martin Shkreli, the pharma bro, that hiked up what vaccine? What shot was that? That
was a big one.
A diabetes shot or something. I feel like he bought it up,
right,
and then hiked the price like 30x.
And the average person couldn't afford it. And this is we don't need to deny people. It shouldn't just be the rich who can have prescription care for themselves. That just isn't, that's not America. This is not let them eat cake. This is not Marie Antoinette. This is one way. And so, like I said, it's really easy and I really do hope that the pharmaceutical companies will eventually sign and say, we get what you're saying. Yes, let's put legislation through that will allow more of this. We've reaped our benefits of it. But instead, they're kind of tying us up over the coating on a pill.
Well, and of course.
Horrible. Yeah, it's the little things or how many are the bottle and all those little nitpicky things. And it's tying us up for years in court. Meanwhile, people are dying or going bankrupt trying to fulfill their medication. This is an easy win for anybody running for office to try to promote this. Because it's not taking away.
Producer Robbie.
Right, exactly.
Producer Robbie works in the medical field. I wonder if you have any thoughts, if you want to weigh in. Thumbs up. Show me if you want to join in. He does have. I thought he would. He works in the medical field. Producer Robbie's joining us.
Hi, Robbie.
Producer Robbie. What do you think?
Hey. Well, I mean, the entire healthcare thing is a scam. I mean, completely honest with you. I mean, so here's what most people don't realize. One, the vast majority of the medications that people use is imported. Most of it comes from China. Also, almost everything that's being used from a hardware perspective, I'm talking about needles, IV tubes, all of it is imported. Nothing is made here. And so a big part of that is by design, because like Scottie was saying, a lot of it is it's all a profit. It's a profit model.
Profit model.
What it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I apologize for the background noise, but there's some work going on next door. But hey, that's just how it's going to be. But long story short, you're not going to get prices down while government has this two-headed snake between profits and just it's just a mess. It's just a mess.
Yeah.
That's all,
everything is.
I'm going to mute because the noise is really bad.
That's a good producer. That's a great producer.
Yes.
Sacrificing his own airtime for the quality of the show. I got to give him credit for that.
Yeah, I figured he would because he works in the medical industry on the back end and he sees all the paperwork and where these drugs come from. I mean, hardly anything is made here in the US. Everything is made. I mean, I don't know what the quality control is from, brand to brand. But everything is brought in from, surprise, surprise. We were talking about this country earlier, India and China. Like those are the two countries that Trump wants to wage a new tariff war with by way of sanctions because of their relationship with Russia. Guess what? They can tie up our medical supply industry. They can completely tie us up if he wants to go that route, but I figured when you told me you were involved in this movement that it was inspired by your late mother, who everybody at the studio loved because she was a riot. And I figured you'd be inspired by that.
You guys did. She was harder on me than any of you. Any of the consultants they brought in, I was like, Mom already told me that. Mom already told me my hair. Mom already commented on my dress. All those sorts of things. So, but
then you learned firsthand, having to deal with her medical issues, all the way to the end, how difficult it is. And you have an elderly dad right now that you have to deal with all of this stuff and access to medicines. And for even if you're not dealing with senior citizens, other people out there listening, this is everybody. I mean, I would say most people after 30 are like on some form of drug or another. And oftentimes people, and I've actually asked this to a friend of mine who works at a packaging and compounding company. He's like a manager there back home in California. And he told me, Manila, don't waste your money going to buy brand name like cortisone creams or aspirins or whatever. He goes, go to the 99-cent store. It's the same thing. You know how I know? Because my factory packages them. Some will say, Bayer aspirin, and some will be generic whatever that gets shipped off to the Dollar Tree or the 99-cent store or Dollar General. He says, they're all the same thing. So for a lot of these like basic regular drugs, he says, go save money, don't buy the brand name. They are exactly the same thing. And then, like you said, but with some of these specialized drugs that have been on the market for 30 plus years, obviously the big pharma companies want to keep a stranglehold on it, because after you've been on market for that long, that you have a huge market base that's reliant on you and will continue to buy from you because that's the brand they know, that's the brand they've used, and they're going to want to continue that. They don't care about our well-being. They don't care about our pocketbooks. They don't care if Americans are more in debt with medical debt than anything else in their household. It is the threat of medical debt. They don't care. So I would, I hope that you see more bipartisan. Thank you. Bipartisan support. And I hope, because what would the Democrats look like? I know that, you're on the conservative side of this, but what would Democrats look like, who, the party that was supposed to be for the people, if they don't speak up against big pharma to push them to release all of these 30-year-old patents, so that it's like, dude, haven't you profited enough? The answer for them, I know, is always no. But what would Democrat lawmakers look like if they don't support this?
Right. And from a conservative standpoint, if you are a conservative and you're screaming about we don't need socialized medicine, I agree with you. We don't want our medicine to go socialized like we see in the UK and Canada. Then we need to get this in. We need to get more generic cost. This only having high cost is what makes people want to go towards socialized medicine. So from a conservative perspective, if you want to fight socialized medicine taking over the American healthcare system, then we got to get cost under control. This is an easy win from that perspective. It makes absolute, like I said, it makes sense on both ways. And one other point I want to point out, we're not just talking about for flu. I mean, there are everyday remedies that needs to be generic. We're talking about treatments for cancer, liver failure. These are really, brand name drugs that are really treated to save lives and the quality of life for very serious diseases, that if you had the generic option, it would really help some of these families who have long-term health issues that they have to rely on prescriptions to survive. And I think those are the folks right now that my heart breaks for, when there could be a generic obligation that would not cause them to have to give up their family budget every month for. So
yeah, and
I'll talk about that.
And not to mention how much it would bring down the whole cost of Medicare and Medicaid. Rather than slashing benefits, why don't you slash the profits of 30-year-old medicines that have been on the market forever and say, hey, Bayer, hey, AstraZeneca, hey, whatever, you've had this patent for long enough. Like, it's time to make that thing sunset, and we're ready to go generic, rather than, slashing. Well, I'm sorry, Grandpa. I know you really need that hypertension medication, but it's going to cost you $700 for this month's medication.
Right. And they come and they say, we do special ways to help. We will give you 2 months, eventually, if you have to live on a medicine, it doesn't matter if you've got your first 3 months at a discounted rate or the first 6 months or even the first year of it. They're banking on the fact they know that you're going to live and you're going to need this medication for 10 years. So it means nothing to them for them to give it to you for the first year at a discounted or at a reduced rate. It's the bigger game of it. Like I said, this is not a war with big pharma. This is about getting them to think of people after they've made back their income and their investment. Real simple.
I think it's a war against big pharma, because you know how I feel against big pharma. And producer Robbie says the point he's trying to make is the only thing we make in America, and this is true, and there was a shortage, is saline. He says saline is the only thing America really produces. And he says what I was trying to say is they privatize the profits and socialize the cost, which is true, because drug development is done, R&D is done through our taxpayer dollars.
Absolutely.
So how is that fair?
It's
how
not.
How is that fair? It's not. All right. This next topic, it applies to everybody, more Scottie than me, because I avoid having to travel even to the other side of town if I don't have to. And that's from yesterday. We'll just breeze through this real quickly, just because it was worth a mention, because it impacts so many people. So United Airlines said a tech issue led to grounding of its flights for a few hours at U.S. airports and major delays across its network on Wednesday. That's now been resolved. They said, while we expect residual delays, our team is working to restore our normal operations, the airline said in a press release. The technology issue prompted ground stops at several major United hub airports, including Newark, Denver, Houston, and Chicago, according to the FAA's website. United said the problem related to its Unimatic system that houses information about each flight that is then fed to the other systems, including those that calculate weight and balance and track flight times. As of 10:25 p.m. Eastern Time, flight tracking data from FlightAware showed that 1,038 flights, or 34% of United flights, were delayed on Wednesday. The FAA acknowledged the technology issue and said that it has offered full support to help address United's flight backlog. U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said in a post on X that the issue was specific to United's operation and was unrelated to the broader air traffic control system, which we know has been under fire as of late. United said it was treating the technology issue as a controllable delay, meaning it would pay customer expenses such as hotels when applicable. The carrier's problems came a few weeks after Alaska Airlines grounded all of its flights for about 3 hours due to an IT outage for the second time in just about a year. In April 2024, Alaska grounded its entire fleet due to an issue with the system that calculates the weight and balances of its plane. So Scottie, you fly regularly. I don't get to fly as much as I used to, and I'm okay with that, because flying sucks. Flying sucks. And having been delayed one too many times, I mean, oh boy. I don't have that many complaints about United myself. I had major complaints with Delta. I'll never fly them again. But, should we just shrug this off like, it happens? Or do you think it kind of underscores how antiquated America's entire, and not to blame just the FAA and the air traffic control systems that we know are outdated, but overall, all of America's transportation industry, how outdated our systems are? Because how come we don't hear about this like in China or Japan? Like, we don't hear about this.
Well, and I'm sure it happens, but in this particular case, it happened because of technology. and a failure in technology that was pushed out. You now have everybody going back and doing an autopsy on United's book, especially if, I mean, what else would you do if you're stuck on a plane for 9 hours and couldn't get off? Yeah, you're going to start looking at why am I here and how this happened? Well, one person who's pretty much an expert in the field actually said the United, that they were grounded due to technological issues. Data confirms that they outsourced their tech development needs to cheaper labor. And that's where you're going to find out. It's not only are we outdated within our flights right now, but it's also they're outsourced. We're not using, you know, in-house capabilities. This could go two ways. I think that if this continues, there's a lot of oversight to the aviation from the federal government, but you don't want too much because, once again, free market. We don't want to have dictations. We're not a dictatorship here in the United States, but we need to make sure that people are safe and that there needs to be the patient, the riders' rights. That's why we used to have, what was it, a Bill of Rights that they gave us?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, this is going to be you're going to see, you know, as long as they continue to not put our tech, you know, not update their technology within some of these key organizations, they're either going to become outdated or they're going to continue to have these problems and people aren't going to ride them anymore. I guarantee folks who ride United are going to think twice before they ride again.
Well, but then here's the problem is do you remember growing up, we used to have like dozens and dozens of air carriers that you can choose from, right? And then these big companies like United or Delta or whatever, they bought them up and consolidated everything. So you don't have many options, especially here domestic. We don't have a lot of options anymore. So I think this is part of the problem. This is where free markets and this style of capitalism has kind of gone way too far, is that you've allowed for monopolies to happen. And when monopolies happen, the consumer gets screwed. I mean, it's the same thing with big pharma, right? Monopolies happen and then we get screwed in our pocketbook. And I think that's kind of what happened with United, and they get lackadaisical and they're like, we don't need to update. Like, we're fine. We're going to use this, you know, this software system from 2010. We're fine. It still works. But it's like, it turns out, no, everything like a car ages. Like, no matter how great you take care of your car, if you've got a 15-year-old car, you're bound to have problems. And if you're outsourcing the labor to begin with, where's the accountability? If you're, you know, no diss on Indian tech workers in India, a lot of brilliant minds out there, but you know, are you really going to have the same level of accountability when you're shipping that overseas to, let's just say, I don't know if it is, but let's just presume it's like some tech company in New Delhi. Are you going to have the same accountability as you would some tech company that's, you know, in, I don't know, Santa Monica, California, Silicon Beach, right? It's not going to be the same pressure because you're here stateside. You're going to feel the pressure from the US government. If you're over there, you're kind of like, I did a good job. It's fine.
So in 2024, the United Airlines CEO, Scott Kirby, had a total compensation of $33.9 million. Okay, now
that's almost as much as Rachel Maddow.
Yeah, pretty much.
Almost.
Maybe that would have done a lot in tech upgrades. Here's the issue, and this is where, unfortunately, I think where we've become a very selfish society. Instead, we have these... You have these people that are like, you know what? I'm going to make as much as I can because if I get fired tomorrow, I can live off my 1 year salary of $33.9 million and I can live a really nice, quiet life and not bother anybody. We need people that reinvest in their companies, and they're not going to do it by choice. Unfortunately, we don't have the 1950s mentality anymore. So if they're not going to do it in places like transportation that we're required to have to keep our daily lives going and flowing, that's where government regulations are supposed to come in. The government should go into every airline and say, have different benchmarks and say, at this stage, you better be here. At this stage, you better be here. And if you're not, we're shutting you down. And your money needs to go into investing in your company, not your CEO's backup plan. And that's where I think where we could rebalance everything right now.
Agreed with that much. Like,
That's
Come
what
on.
government regulations are what they're supposed to be for, is it guaranteeing that everything continues to run smoothly. In this case, obviously it didn't. And if United has this issue, I'm sure others have as well. Who went through a couple years ago? One of the major airlines went through a major tech upgrade. It was very expensive. Was it Southwest? One of them did, but it was worth it because they're not having to shut down and deal with this kind of stuff. And it's going to continue to happen.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, you know, every time the iPhone gets an iOS update, it always screws up something for me, and then I have to like, and you know how I feel about tech issues. I'd be happy to go back analog, but that's not the world we live in. That's not the reality. But yeah, don't even get me started about when they do these airline company, you know, every industry has like these conventions, right? And like, and would-be suppliers have their booths and stuff. I just recently read an article about I think it's a Spanish company from, I don't know where, and I think it's somewhere in, I don't know, like Madrid, Spain or something. They are trying to sell stand-up seats.
I know.
Because you can potentially put in 20% more passenger load. No. So you could sell more seats. So you can quasi not really sit down. Your legs are kind of hanging down. Like you're pretty much, it's like you're standing but leaning on a seat a little bit. Horrible. And then watch they implement that. And then, you know, our cost of per ticket goes up and the CEO still make like $50 million. So, you know, whatever. Like that's a different conversation too. All right. Last but not least, we're going to get into this home remod. So I'm gonna go ahead and just read this little article here from Newsweek. So this is what Newsweek had to say about it. So the White House has completed plans to pave over the Rose Garden lawn with a new patio. The garden, which has long been a backdrop for important presidential announcements, has been remodeled after the White House said that it, quote, not been given any tender loving care in many decades. Newsweek contacted the White House for more information on the Rose Garden via email. Now, the Rose Garden is one of the most instantly recognizable features of the White House, perhaps second only to the Oval Office. It has been used for announcements, events, and receptions of international leaders since the early 1900s, and many of the defining moments in presidential history have taken place there. The renovations, finished on August 1st, involved replacing the lawn of the Rose Garden entirely with a concrete patio of diamond-shaped plates, which match the color of the White House. The changes were funded by the Trust for the National Mall, along with private donors, according to reports by Axios. The rose bushes that give the garden its name were not damaged or moved at all during this process. The Rose Garden was created in 1913 by Ellen Wilson, the wife of President Woodrow Wilson. It was redesigned in 1961 by President John F. Kennedy to serve as a space for outdoor ceremonies. It has since become a regular venue for various events, including receptions, press briefings, and other occasions. First Lady Melania Trump redesigned the garden in 2019 during her husband's first term. The renovations drew backlash at the time and led to a petition asking for the changes to be reversed. Now, since returning to the White House, Trump has made some significant changes, including a transformation of the Oval Office. He's added gold medallions, gold vermeil figurines, gold eagles, and gilded Rococo mirrors. What are people saying? White House Communications Director Stephen Chung, in a statement shared by the New York Times back in March, said the White House has not been given any tender, loving care in many decades, so President Trump is taking necessary steps in order to preserve and restore the greatness and glory of the People's House. Now, Chris D. Jackson, a political strategist who worked on the Biden campaign, said on social media, "This is awful. The Rose Garden and the colonnade used to be my favorite parts of the White House. Now they look like everything else he touches, stripped down, soulless, and ruined." here's hoping the next first family doesn't just reverse policy, but rips out every bit of this tasteless mess. The campaign group Republicans Against Trump said, quote, "My God, this is the White House Rose Garden. After Trump's overhaul, stripped, paved, lifeless. Everything Trump touches dies. The White House will continue to use the Rose Garden for important press events and receptions." Now, Scottie, we already know that you and I are on different angles of this.
Completely, but keep going.
Well, and this is supposed to be the ballroom, right? Like a mock-up of the ballroom, which we'll get to that later. Like I said, Versailles or Versace, you decide. I don't know. But for me, looking at the White House Rose Garden, you and I have both been there at separate times. It is not easy to do when they do the press conferences there as a woman with our shoes, even if I wear sensible block-heeled shoes or even boots, you will no doubt sink into that grass. You get all muddy and yucky and gross. I think what he did, I don't know, but I think it looks nice. I think people can go ahead and look at it. It's a nice marble layout of a patio. Like, sure, the green grass, like we're looking at this old footage from like the 80s. That's what the Rose Garden looked like up until a couple months ago where they started the renovation. We've seen like that famous like beer summit that Barack Obama had there, right? With I forget, I think it was Professor Henry Louis Gates or something. But like all the surrounding shrubbery remains, all the Wilson era rose bushes are still there. It's just the center piece of grass was taken out. That's all it is. It was paved over. It's just sod. Not a big deal. If the next president wants to, like, here's what it looked like back in the day. Look at that. Like it was like a maze, like they had like a bush maze. It looked like you would see at an English estate or something. So obviously over time, whoever inhabits the White House puts their own taste on things. I'm not a fan of Rococo. I think it's gilded and blah. So whatever, but that's the interior, whatever. For the Rose Garden, I think it's a pretty thing that he did, laying marble down. I think it looks nice. I think it will be much more usable. And you know what? Honestly, ADA compliant. Americans with disabilities can go there and roll their chairs on. No problem. Trump likes to bring all the, disabled veterans there and whatever. I think this is great for them. I think it's great for people like you and I that wear high heels. I think that's great for us. It'll make for no one's tracking mud when they walk back into the White House. I don't think it's a big deal. And if the next president doesn't like that and wants to reverse course, then fine. Strip up the marble and lay down sod. Not a big stinking deal. I think people are politicizing this where it really doesn't need to be. I think it is a smart addition, and I think they're going to see they're going to get really great use out of that patio that they laid down for all of the receptions, for all of the press briefings. I think people are going to actually be happy about its usability, and they need to just stop making this about politics and just understand even if you're renting, right? I've rented many places. I have put my own splash on things when I move into places. And before I move out, because I want to get my deposit back, I just put it back. I just put everything back the way I found it. I paint the walls back to the plain, vanilla colored walls and voila, you're back. It's fine. Why is this such a big deal?
No, you're right. And you're right about this, Manila. It's a very practical decision. It was a decision that I'm shocked nobody had done. And it wasn't until you just read it that I realized the biggest thing is if you listen to the mainstream on this, it's like he ripped out the roses himself, that he was out there evil laughing, taking out the flowers. He didn't do it. It's still
He hates nature.
He hates nature. And which is what they want to try to perceive him to be, this very cold-hearted man. That being said, it's a practical decision. I cannot tell you, since the whole thing about the White House is it has to look pristine. After one of these Rose Garden events, I guarantee that grass, the sod probably had to be relayed, or if it was trampled, if it was muddy. I guarantee the gardener would have to spend. So from a practical standpoint, this is a long-term solution that you and I would do in our backyard. If we constantly held events in our backyard, we put down pavers. We put places.
Or you'd put up a deck.
Right.
You build a deck.
Things that is not going to continuously be trodden on or mud. So this actually is a very practical decision. I don't think they'll take it back up. I think this is something that'll be permanent, because while the press likes to complain about anything Donald Trump, secretly, I guarantee they're going, this was just so helpful. Thank you. We don't have to worry about our camera tripods sinking down into the grass anymore and having to unstable and everything that goes into it. So this was a good deal. Call it the Donald Trump Rose Garden from now on, whatever. Melania, the Melania cement pad, whatever you want to call it. This was from a practical standpoint is how it should have been sold, necessarily, other than just a Donald Trump deciding to rip out nature, which is how.
See, you flipped course now that you've heard the article.
Now that I heard that he kept the rose, if you listen to it, made it sound like he tore out all the garden.
No,
and that's
just the sod.
Right. And sod that they probably just had to replace 6 months ago anyways, or 3 months ago.
Every few months, look, every time the White House hosts an event there, and you and I, like I said, we've both been to the garden. There's plenty of grass. If the first family wants to go running outside for whatever reason, you've got the biggest south lawn. The biggest piece of real estate in Washington, D.C. is the freaking south lawn. If reporters, from the far left that are criticizing, he's a New Yorker and he hates nature and blah, then fine. You go do your hit from the south lawn. There's acres and acres of green grass that you can go walk in.
Right.
I would prefer to stand on something solid and have my cameraman, like you pointed out, not have his tripod sinking into the mud. Then we track mud all over everywhere. Then we get yelled at by White House staff for tracking mud. Like, dude, why did you host an event on a wet concourse? Like, why didn't you put down a dance floor like they do at weddings, right? Like, you bring a temporary, like you could have done that, but no, they have it all on the grass, and people can go look this up. There are all kinds of White House Rose Garden blooper videos of people
falling,
especially women, getting their shoes stuck in the sod, and they fall over. That's a real thing. I think a reporter, I don't remember what era it was, but there was a reporter that twisted her ankle.
Right.
And she sprained her ankle and had to be hauled off.
So it's for
on an ambulance.
For OSHA, the benefit of OSHA, that they made the White House more
work hazard.
It was a work hazard.
It was a work hazard.
It's practical.
So stop making this a political thing.
We got to go to the latest announcement, which you didn't realize. So Trump yesterday goes up on the roof because he wants to survey from the top. No, Trump is a builder, folks. We knew this. This is just who he does. This is where he feels the best on. It's in his DNA. So he goes up on the roof and he's surveying all the property around. He yells at reporters from the roof, which gives him a great photo op, asking if they've seen the Cindy Sweeney ad. I think that's what he said. I think that's it.
Oh my God.
But he wanted to see the layout of it. I'm not as big of a fan of this right now. I'll be honest with you. The timing is probably not the best. I get that he wants it to be done while he's still in office, so you probably need 3 years to build it. But you are still dealing with an economy. The majority of American.
Wait, this?
Yes.
Oh, the ballroom.
The ballroom.
Oh.
You understand, in the White House, there are places for them to gather already. There's at least 1 room, 2 rooms I can think of off the top of my head where you can host large scale events on. To host a ball of this size, I think the reason, but I do think one of the reasons why the Democrats are upset about it, because I don't know if they can fill it up with people if it's built, if they ever get power again. But I think that now is just not the time to announce, especially while some of these federal employees, these jobs should have been eliminated. When the whole reason why we bring in DOGE is to eliminate superfluous government costs. I just don't know if this was the right timing and the right message that Trump needed to be sending to the American people.
Yeah, taste and decor wise, if this is the mock-up and this is what they think it's going to look, but you're right. I forget, I'm like, why is he doing this rooftop stunt? Because normally up there, that's where you see the sharpshooters, the snipers.
Right.
And And Trump just shows up and then shouts about Sydney Sweeney. Like, what the hell? But you're right. He's a developer and he wanted a bird's eye view on how things are going.
Mhm.
This is not my taste. I'm more of a fan of like very, very muted, neutral Scandinavian minimalism. Like that's kind of my thing. This is the exact opposite of my taste, but that's all right.
It's beautiful, the money that's going to go into now. The funds are going to come from private donors. It's going to come from trust. It's going to come from donors. I mean, was it Tim Cook was just at the White House yesterday? I'm sure he had to pay a nice little fee. So this is not going to be funded by taxpayer dollars, which is good. I'll give them that.
Oh, that's good.
That's a good one. I just the timing of it. I think it just, is it a necessity? I would love to know the event that we couldn't have at the White House because they didn't have a big enough room to host it. I would love to know that right now. And and I'm sure Secret Service is going, oh, here's another building that, more people on property. Just that would be my only question for it. Is that, just the timing.
That's good. No, the time you're right. The timing looks bad, but Scottie, it's going to take a long time to finish. He's only got 3 years left at this point. He's adding a full wing to the White House, and
it's bigger than the White House. I think by the time they said it's done, it's going to actually dwarf the White House. It's bigger than the White House.
Get out. The ballroom?
Yes, that's if you look at it.
The ballroom is supposed to be bigger than
You've seen the mock-ups of it.
Oh wow. I did not know that. I just figured
it's 90,000 square foot ballroom. It's double the size of the actual White House.
90,000 square feet.
It's a $200 million White House ballroom. And I get it that it's going to be funded by private funds, but guess what? The taxpayers are going to have to put electricity in it, heat and cool it. Yeah. So there's
wow.
Right. That's the thing. It's going to dwarf the White House.
90. I'm just trying to picture like what was not like how big was our studio space at RT America? 90,000 square feet. That's bigger than bigger than a Costco.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. It's going to be, I'm sure it's beautiful. It'll have a seating capacity of approximately 650 people. It's a lot of donors. It just scares me. They have,
I did not know. Oh, we've got another ad that we got. Okay, so before we sign off, we'll leave it there. You guys, please leave us a comment. Let us know what you think about this White House renovation. Are you pro patio? I'm pro patio.
Yay.
Pro patio. Ballroom. I guess the upside is it's not funded by taxpayer money.
But we're going to have to find it. We're going to, and anybody that owns a house knows that sometimes that expense can get pretty big.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, at least that's the upside. All right, producer Robbie, go ahead and drop in the new ad, and we'll have a read and then say goodbye, because we're coming up on 90 minutes. All right. Here's the new one. All right. Word from our sponsor. Okay. Hey everyone. Tired of paying outrageous prices for your medications while other countries pay a fraction of the cost? President Trump just signed an executive order to fix this problem. But why wait? Blockbusterhealth.com is already offering Americans these savings right now. We're talking up to 80% off the same exact medications you're already taking. Same brands, same quality, just fair prices. Whether it's Ozempic, insulin, or any other prescription, Blockbuster Health connects you directly with licensed pharmacies that offer international pricing. No middlemen, no markup, just honest prices. Call 1-888-350-1353 or visit blockbusterhealth.com. Americans shouldn't have to choose between their health and their wallet. So go check it out.
I agree.
We have to go check that out. So obviously they knew we did a whole thing, Scottie, with the whole generic pills. And they were like, oh, we've got something for you. TMI Show.
Hey, and it's going to keep the electricity on at Manila's house. So we appreciate it.
That's right. It'll pay for the interweb so we could do more of these. Scottie Nell Hughes, it's always so much fun having you on air. Thank you so much for stepping in while Ted is out there, I think, trying to go hunt or ride a moose. I don't know what he's doing in Montana, and then book signing, I think. Something like that. I think he's trying to emulate Vladimir Putin and try to go ride a grizzly bear.
Bare-breasted?
Maybe. Robbie, let us know if Ted goes bare-chested out there riding a grizzly bear.
No,
if he's half the man that Vladimir Putin is.
That's funny.
Scottie Nell Hughes, tell us where they can find you on a website, any of your work, anything you want to promote.
At Scottie Nell Hughes, go find me on X right now as I continue to grow, and we'll go from there. That's the best place, though.
And go check out Scottie's thing that she's working on. Where did you publish that? At Real Clear Health?
That was Real Clear Health. There'll be more articles coming out for it, and we'll continue to see. Hopefully, we'll get momentum continuing on this legislation. We'll have some action next year.
I hope so. Trying to save some money never hurt. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Scottie. We'll see you tomorrow. Ted will be back on from Montana, probably sitting side by side with producer Robbie on a bear. Or a moose, buffalo, bison, bison. America has no buffalo. No buffalo. Robbie says buffalo. I thought it was bison. I don't. Okay, I'm very confused. I need to go to Montana. Obviously, I had no idea. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in, Scottie. I'm gonna have to pull you back on because it's a hoot, and I know a lot of people are happy to see you back on air doing a hosting gig because. That's where you belong.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Adios, amigos. Bye.